Hi, friends. Today I welcome Laura to share her wild pregnancy and unassisted birth story. Laura chose this path as a first-time mom, and she spent her wild pregnancy on her land in Peru, in the jungle, trusting her baby and her body. Laura's birth story is a testament to how wide the spectrum of normal really is. She tuned in with her intuition for reassurance that everything is okay, and she has no regrets. Enjoy this one, mamas.
Yeah, so I actually knew before I became pregnant that I was going to free birth. Um, Actually, how it came around is kind of a weird story because I live in Peru now, but it was not by choice. It was by the pandemic. So my husband is Peruvian, and we were traveling in Mexico, and then when the pandemic hit, like just before we were warned by my parents, and I made the split moment decision to go with my husband back to Peru, and I got into the border 4 hours before it closed, and I've been here ever since. So I didn't actually make a choice out of it. It was actually hell the first year and a half because I just like was cut off from my entire life and just completely my life was gone like one day to the next.
Wow.
And I was locked up in an apartment with six people. Like it was really hard for me. It was also really beautiful for my relationship with my husband, but really hard for my personal life and my business and everything else. And so eventually we decided to move out of Lima because my husband saw and I knew how depressed I was. So we decided to travel around and then we decided to buy land. And when we found the town that we knew we were going to settle into, I knew really quickly that I wanted to have kids. I loved how the children were being raised here, like barefoot and wild, and just totally happy and totally unaffected by the pandemic and everything that comes along with that, and the world at large. And I was like, okay, I think this is the place that I want to do it. And then I was like thinking, okay, I'm definitely not having a hospital birth, even though like my mom was a nurse, so I was never at that point. I was not scared of hospitals necessarily, but I always kind of knew I was gonna have a home birth. But at the same time, like the hospital here was not an option for me because here you birth alone always, 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 always. Like all women birth alone. They never have any support people. They never, their husbands are not allowed in. Like it's really archaic. It's ridiculous.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and also at that time, obviously, but it still continues now, is that women have to wear masks. And I was like, there's no way in hell I'm wearing a mask while giving birth. So then I was like, okay, what about a midwife? And then I looked around, there was nothing close by. The closest one was like 24 hours away. So I was like, yeah, that's not an option. Then I was like, well, I guess I'll just do it by myself then. And I honestly had never even heard of free birth before. I had no idea that women did this by themselves. Like my mom did a home birth with a midwife. So I knew home birth existed. That was in my spectrum forever because I was born that way. Um, but hearing women just do it by themselves, I thought it was nuts. I was just like, well, I'll just do it. Like that's who I am. I'll just do things even if it seems weird. Like I've traveled by myself since 2013. And back then, like everyone was like, you're a girl, you're traveling by yourself. Are you crazy? And I've done it forever. Like even in countries that seem dangerous, like all of South America and Central America, and I've done it forever. So I've always done things just because I wanted to, not because that was the norm. And then really quickly afterwards, I connected with a friend, a sister of a friend from high school, and she mentioned, she's like, yeah, I'm having a free birth. I was like, what's that? She's like, well, it's when you have a home birth, but you don't have a midwife or anyone there. And I was like, that's what I'm doing. There's a name for that. I had no idea. That's what I'm planning to do when I have a baby one day. And yeah, so she gave me resources. I started looking into it. And then the more that I learned about it, it was less about, oh, I don't want to do it in a hospital. And it was more like, no, free birth is the best option to give birth. Like, I'm not doing it because there's no other options. I'm doing it because this is literally how I want my baby to be born. This is how I want to experience birth. And I saw the magic and the spirituality and the power and the possibility of how you come out of free birth compared to how you come out of hospital birth or even midwifery birth, because you are 100% reliant on yourself. You build this trust in yourself and your intuition that you don't get when you have anyone else there. And I wanted that. And I also didn't want to have any risks of my baby being traumatized when she was born or any of that. And I knew that free birth would be the safest option for her in that aspect. So yeah, then I became um, really quickly after that, I did a midwifery program. I did a lot of different things. And then really quickly afterwards, I was like, okay, no, I do want to become pregnant. Um, and when I started that journey, I actually became pregnant immediately. Um, and well, at least that's what I believe. That's what I felt in my body. And then I actually miscarried really quickly afterwards before I could even prove it in a worldly way. But I felt it in my body. And I also saw it in my bleed. I bled off my schedule and it was really heavy and all that kind of stuff. So I knew that I'd lost that baby. It was really hard for me. And that's when I really realized I somehow had this intuitive feeling because I never had any training. I didn't have any anyone guiding me. This is all my own. I was all by myself here in the jungle on this property. I was just figuring it out as I go. And I was like, okay, there's a lot of stuff that I need to fix, because the reason that or one of the reasons why I had that miscarriage was because I had a really, 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 really big fight with a family member, and so big that literally, yeah, it was really intense. I just knew that my life was a mess. I knew that my mental health was a mess. And then in that process of healing my body and healing my mind, I also realized that my diet was a mess also. So I learned all these different things about a diet and how to really nourish the body, what is actually necessary. And then I learned really deep inside of me to let go of fear, let go of stress, to not allow the outside world to affect me so intensely. Even my close family and friends, like nothing, to not allow anything to control how I feel and my mindset and my well-being. Um, and then about 6 months later, I finally was pregnant, and I felt it almost immediately. I could tell, like when I look back, at first I thought that I didn't realize it right away, but when I look back, I knew about 2 weeks before my period didn't show up. And so I knew a lot, like pretty much right away, because I could feel it in my body. Like I remember that there was like this weight in my womb. It can only explain like my womb. I'd never experienced it before, but I was like, oh, it's like heavy. It's like there's a rock in there. It was so crazy. And it was like, obviously my boobs hurt, and my mind was just so different. Like something had switched in my mind. And I think it's the journey from that first miscarriage to that. I became so conscious of my body. I connected so deeply with my own body and with my spirit baby, I guess you could say, even though I didn't necessarily really know about, like I knew about spirit babies, but I didn't have necessarily like a clear visualization. But I do believe that I was connecting with that baby in a way, shape, or form, in a very non-super connective way, but it was still there. And so I knew right away. And then I waited and I waited and I waited, and then I didn't get my period. Then I didn't get it for 4 days, and that's when I finally told my husband. And it's crazy because I knew that I knew that I knew that I knew. And then I told him, and he's like, "Yay, congratulations!" Because it was more, to be honest, a happiness for me, because for him it wasn't such a big drive, and he wouldn't really be interested until the very end of my pregnancy and when my daughter was born. And now really 6 months later is really when he started to connect with being a dad and all of that. Before, it was really my journey, and he just supported me on the journey that I really wanted to become a mother. So then he was like, how do you know? I was like, well, I just know. And that even that question, even though he probably didn't mean it any other way, but but do I know? And then all of a sudden I start questioning. And that's when I really realized the power, or like how quickly our convictions can be taken. And that's when I really double was sure that I'm not going to any hospitals doing anything, because like, I don't know why, but somehow when someone questions you so quickly, maybe it's a female thing, because you're so cute, you're so used to being a good girl, and like to make sure that you know that you know that you know. And because I didn't have that proof, I was like, well, what if I'm wrong? And then I tell people, and then I'm not right. And then all of a sudden, like all these knowings and these feelings and sensation in my body that I knew, all of a sudden I couldn't believe it anymore. I couldn't trust it. So I ended up getting a pregnancy test, which I regret big time, but it wasn't a big deal. I just did peed on a stick, and then it was confirmed. And then I told the whole world. I'm just kidding. I didn't tell the whole world. I told a couple of my friends, and I told my family, and that was it for then. And then we traveled the next week to Lima, and then I surprised his family. It was really cute, actually. It was what I shared on my Instagram. It was really, really sweet. And basically I pretended to take a picture with them, and then I was like, I'm pregnant. And they all were just like, wait, what? It was really cute, and they were so excited. And it actually really helped with the excitement of being pregnant, because my family is much more reserved, being like German, and then his family is Latino, so they were like super excited and like jumping up and down and giving us hugs. And it was like the first time that we really felt real deep excitement for this thing that was coming, because his family knew that we wanted to have kids. His family had been kind of part of the journey to a degree, like his mom and his sister specifically, and so they were all really excited for us. It was really, really special. And from then, yeah, and then I just lived on my land. I walked barefoot. I really nourished myself well. I made sure to eat really, really, really well. I spent a lot of time in my mental health and my own internal journey mostly. I spent a lot of time alone, like even though I actually was surrounded by people all the time, I spent a lot of time just working through things in my own mind, in my own head. Started to plan and think about what I wanted to do, where I wanted to get exactly. At first I thought around the land, and then I thought the suggestion maybe we want to go to our own to stay in, so that we could just be away from our normal life and all the people here, and just have time for the two of us, before the baby came, and then afterwards when the baby came. And it was a journey, a lot of going back and forth. I knew 100% always that I was going to free birth, but there's sometimes, doubts that sets in. It's like, what if something does go wrong? And all that. And I would always come back to, this is the best for my baby. This is absolutely the best for my baby, because there is more likelihood that something's going to go wrong in a hospital, and they're going to over pathologize it and then turn into huge trauma, unnecessary trauma, than if you have a home birth. If something goes wrong, you can always go to the hospital, but there's less likelihood of that happening here. And I know I'm learning that with my pregnancy test and everything like that, that if I go into a hospital, like there were so many experiences during my pregnancy, like one of my friends, she was actually pregnant before I was, but we didn't know because she didn't know, or she didn't tell anyone. She's a young woman. And I ended up supporting her through her labor. She called me while she was already in labor, so there was no preparation. I was just there to be a friend and support and everything like that. And she ended up deciding to transfer to the hospital somewhere around transition. And then some of the nurses saw that I was highly pregnant, which at that time I was only 6 months, but I had a huge belly, so it looked like I was going to pop any day. I looked huge, honestly. Like people thought that I was going to be having my baby at 5 months old, like 5 weeks pregnant, 5 months pregnant. Sorry. And so I was really big, and I just got bigger and bigger. I actually thought for a long time that I was carrying twins because I really was not sure, because I felt kicks really, really early. I was huge. Like literally everyone was like, "Are you sure there's only one baby?" And I was like, "Actually, I have no idea." We will find out. So other than that, like it was honestly beautiful and it was amazing. And so when I was at that hospital and I had dropped off my friend because I drove to the hospital at the end, some nurses had seen me and they had started asking around who I was. And then they figured out who I was, and then they started asking people. And we live about 3 hours away from town. And especially for someone who doesn't know how to drive this road. And they came up to our property looking for me. And I was like,
What?
holy shit. I'm like, it's like, this whole infantilization of women when they're pregnant. Like, this is like the next level. It's like, you think I'm so dumb that I'm pregnant, and if I needed help, didn't you think I would have come to you? Like, I'm not stupid. Like, what do you think women are when you're pregnant? Like, they came looking for me to give me help, and I denied them. I didn't even come to them. I didn't see that. I sent my brother and my husband to go send them off. And led down a lot of things, which happened after the birth. But basically, they come up here 3 times, once every week, and then eventually they stopped. They texted my husband. They found his phone number somehow, and yeah, it was a crazy thing, and it scared the shit out of me. I'm not gonna lie.
That
Like
is
now in hindsight, I'm like,
really
damn, I should have just talked to them. Maybe it would have been easier. And the hindsight, but in the moment I was terrified. Like, what if they stalk me? What if they like literally drag me to the hospital? Because here they think it's illegal to home birth, but it's actually not. It just, they make it seem like it is. Like they say it's not allowed, but it actually is. It's gray zone here, so you can do it. It's just very much frowned upon. And afterwards I learned that big time, because everyone literally looked at me like I was absolutely nuts. And yeah, so that was my pregnancy. So like the beginning was beautiful and it was extremely stressful and like so much drama. And yeah, and then I like hid away at the house that we rented for the last month and just like really settled down and didn't talk to anyone, didn't do anything, and really got into a good zone. So I was ready for when the baby came.
good. I'm glad you did that, because that is so intense to come to your
Mm-hmm.
home. Oh
Yeah,
my
and like
goodness,
went
that's
into the
next
property,
level.
like with dogs, and like we have like 4 rivers you have to cross. Like they were like committed. Like that's crazy. And that's when
No,
I was
that
just like,
is like
holy shit, like these people
wildly.
are nuts.
What's the like the insurance situation there? Like, do do they benefit financially from you like coming into the
Her dad
hospital?
and
Like,
her sister. And the hospital sent, like she had gone to we have like these things called postas here, which is like kind of like not really a clinic. It's basically a vaccination station. But basically they like to help people in communities. So each community has like one of these postas. And so she went to the posta to check, which she's like really, she wants to be like, she is a strong woman, she's young, she's only 20 years old. And but she at the same time is like, her mom is very connected to the system. So like her dad is very not connected to the system. Her mom is very, so she has like those two mixes. And so she like went to the doc to this posta to have the nurses check, and they told her, oh yeah, you're gonna have your baby today. Basically, which she didn't. She had it like, it was like I was with her for 40 hours while I was 6 months pregnant. That was really intense. And eventually transferred to the
how
hospital. She
did
had
they
an
know
echocardiography.
she was gonna have her baby that day?
So I don't know exactly. I was like,
That's
we
crazy.
don't know that. There's like no way to know that. But they checked her apparently. They told her that, or maybe her symptoms. I don't know. Anyways, but then because they knew, they sent doctors and nurses to her house to try and get her to the hospital. And then we were just like, no, she's sleeping, she's fine. And I was just like, she's sleep. If she's sleeping, I lied. I lied. She told me she didn't want to go there, but I told them she's sleeping. So if she's sleeping, obviously it's not strong enough to go to the hospital yet. And so that got them away. The first time they came 2 more times. And then at the end, when she decided to go to the hospital, they came again. and they literally followed me and they sent an ambulance to bring her. Like it was so dramatic. It was just like, and they're like racing down the road and like so dramatic. And I was like, she's having a baby. She's not dying. Like relax the
That is
F out.
intense.
Like it's just, oh my God, it's just so crazy. There's just so much fear.
Yeah, that's intense. That's like really intense. Um, you guys, thank God, ended up getting this, hideaway space for you to give birth because I mean, was
The
that
nurse
was
didn't
that
know about it. They didn't know anything where that was. And like I literally had to be careful. Like I didn't tell anyone in the entire neighborhood about that house where we were staying. I told everyone who didn't know, do not tell a single soul, please. And
seriously?
like it's crazy. Like I was literally in a hideout to give birth. It was nuts.
Wow. Okay, so you're there for about a month. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so let's go from there. How were the like last few weeks leading up to birth as far as like, mentally and yeah, mostly mentally. Like were you what cuz that is such an intense thing to have to like worry about in the back of your mind.
Mm-hmm.
So did that
Yeah. So I
play
was
into anything?
not really. Like I did have a fear that they would randomly show up, like that someone tell them, and that's why I didn't tell anyone when I went into labor. I didn't tell anyone how far along it was. Nobody knew my due date. Like I didn't tell anyone. Only my husband knew. Not even my mom knew because she's a nurse, and she's amazing. She's an amazing nurse. She's an amazing human being. But she still has never seen physiological birth, so she doesn't really know what I've been studying and the things that I know. And so I didn't want to put that fear in her. She had in her calculations calculated the 7th of April, but my due date was actually the 31st of March. So I just let her believe the number that she said, but I knew when my time was. So and so I just that would gave me like I knew I had an extra week, but I was like, if it goes over a week, should be okay, hopefully. But like then she's probably gonna start getting nervous and I want that energy. But I also was like, I wanted to be that mom that went to 42 or 43 weeks. Like I was totally prepared for it. And honestly, I love being pregnant. Like, yeah, it was hard. It was like heavy. My back hurt a lot, but I loved it. Like it was such a freaking miracle. Like I don't think you realize, like, I grew up, like, I always wanted to be pregnant. That was one thing I always wanted. I always wanted to be pregnant. I was super excited for that day. But I didn't realize how I knew it was going to be incredible, but it was so much more incredible than I thought it was going to be. Like,
Aw.
there's like this thing moving inside of you. It grows in your own body. When you really like have the time to think about what is actually happening, it's like the most miraculous thing that ever happens in life. Like, you're like, holy shit, like, this is a thing growing inside of me. And it's from me, it's with my love, obviously. But like, there's this thing inside of me and it's beautiful and it's amazing and it reacts to me and like I can feel her moving and at the end she moves so much. She's like a little dancer. She would move all the time. And it's just like the coolest thing ever. And I honestly was like, I was like sad it was coming to an end. I was like, I'm excited to be a mom, don't get me wrong, but I'm really sad for pregnancy to end because it was just such an incredible experience, even with all the hard, even with like the intensity. And I kept acid reflux and all these things and I had like severe back pain because like I told you my belly was huge. Like nobody could tell from behind that I was pregnant. It was all belly and it was so heavy and coming down. And like it was huge. I have to send you pictures at some point because like I said, at 5 months, people thought that I was already gonna give my baby, and I was like, nah, I gotta like probably at least another 5 months to go.
Oh
Um,
my goodness. I
and
love that.
so and she wasn't small either. I don't remember how. I think I calculated at some point it was like almost 8 pounds, so it's not that big, not that small, but somehow she just looked really big. I don't know if I had a lot of amniotic fluid or what it was, which I think I did because I had quite the explosion during my birth. But anyways, and so then it was the one thing that also surprised me is being a free birth and not having like this pressure like what normal society has, where they have this idea that, oh, your due date means that's actually when your baby's going to be born, which is what society believes, which is obviously not true. I was like, well, my baby could come like at 37 weeks, like from like 36 weeks. I was like, if these are twins, they could literally come anytime. If this is not a twin, like I still have another month. I mean, even if it was twins, it could be another month. It could be another month. It could be another 2 weeks. It could be tomorrow, or it could be like another 6 weeks. I didn't realize how much that would mess with my mind. I mean, like, I can make plans, but I can't really go anywhere because, it could happen literally anytime. It was really weird. I didn't realize how crazy that is when you don't like what normal society has. Was like, this is your due date, and then if your due date doesn't happen, you'll probably have your baby within the next week because they're going to induce you, right? So
Exactly.
it was such a weird thing. I was like, if I do go to 43 weeks, which I was highly expecting, like I had no, because my mom said that I was a month late, so I was like, well, maybe, who knows? Like it could go until 43 weeks. Who knows what happens, right? So I was just like prepared for the worst, which it was not the worst. I was totally prepared and I was totally okay with that. And so I was like, at 36 weeks, it could still be another 7 weeks, or it could be another 2 weeks, or it could be tomorrow. Like it was so
Yeah.
crazy. I did not expect that. And it was really fun to just like play with it. I mean, like, who knows what'll happen? Like I would have a sensation. I was like, is this something? I don't know. Is this something? I don't know. Well, I'll just see what happens. And like not putting any pressure on anything. And like I remember at the beginning of the week, so I gave birth on Sunday. And so on Monday, I remember having like regular sensations and be like, are these contractions? I don't know. Let's just see what happens. And I would like dance and have to just continue my day. I didn't say anything to my husband because I didn't want to have any expectations. So I just kind of let it happen, see what happened. And then Tuesday, nothing happened, but I couldn't, was it Tuesday night that I couldn't sleep? So yeah, Monday night I couldn't sleep because I had those sensations. And I think at that night I was like just thinking and I was listening to some podcasts. And then on Tuesday I slept fine. Then on Wednesday I had a gush of some kind. And I think it was some sort of amniotic fluid, but just a small amount. And so it was like enough to make my underwear wet, enough to take my pajamas off, but not enough to be like, okay, something's happening. And so I just kept going. I think I mentioned it to my husband. I was like, just in case, let's go shopping and get like all the food that I want, everything, just in case we have the house ready. But I didn't actually expect anything to happen because it was really early because my due date was on Friday. So this was Wednesday. This was 2 days before my due date. So then I was like, just in case we'll get ready, like I'll prepare for it just in case it does happen, but I'm not expecting it. I actually was expecting that it wouldn't happen. And then on Thursday, nothing happened. On Friday also. Then I was like, oh, I'm still going. And Wednesday night when I woke up too, I was up until 4 a.m. making my birth playlist. I was like, well, might as well. I can't sleep anyway. So I made my birth playlist at that time. And then on Thursday, we went shopping, got all the stuff we got. Friday, nothing happened. And then on Saturday, my friends who live here, they asked me to help them as a translator at the bank so I could get a bank account. And so I went to the bank with them. I was still riding my motorcycle, by the way. I was still driving a motorcycle all over, which is not fine. Like here, we don't drive very fast, so it's totally fine. And I loved it. It was the last time I drove my motorcycle. I haven't driven it since, so it's like it was like a last memory. And I went to the bank with them. I had lunch with them, but I could barely eat anything. Looking back, I'm like, I should have noticed it because I could barely eat anything. Like I think I had 4 bites, and I was starving every day before that. Oh, oops, it broke off again. Sorry, what was the last
I
thing you
got
got? Maybe.
that you were riding on the motorcycle and then I couldn't hear after that.
Okay, so yeah, I was riding the motorcycle still. I was helping my friends go to the bank. So we went to the bank, did their thing. That was like a 3 hour thing. Then we went and ate. And I was starving the whole time to the bank. And then we got to lunch and all of a sudden I wasn't hungry. So that should have been a sign because I like ate 5 bites, if that. Took it all with me to go. And then I went to our favorite cafe. And I remember writing my last post before my baby was born. And it was something along the lines of, I obviously never said publicly when my due date was. So I just kind of said like my birth window is open, which could mean anything, right? And like you can like could be anytime now or it could be anytime in the future, who knows what will happen. And I was something like along the lines of like I know exactly what's going to happen, but I also have no idea what's going to happen, because that's the crazy thing about studying birth for so long and being a birth worker is like what's going to happen, like like the steps, the process, but then like what your personal experience is and what actual lived experience is a whole nother thing, right? So I was like, I know
Yeah.
exactly what's going to happen, and I also have no idea what's going to happen. And then I basically was like, well, whenever you're ready, baby, I'm ready, but I'm also patient, so you can come whenever you're ready. Well, apparently that was the sign, because I drove home. I think I got home at 6 o'clock. I got into the door. I stripped off all my clothes. I remember I felt literally nuts. I was like, I feel so high and so weird. And like, I had been feeling high a couple of times before that. So like, it was a sensation I've had a couple of times before, like this high feeling, which is a sign that you might be in the birth window. Which not necessarily, because I had it a month before. So that didn't mean anything, but I had like a whole day where I felt high as a kite. But anyways, I was feeling high and super weird. I stripped off my clothes, laid into bed, started to fall asleep. And then my husband's like, dinner's ready. I was like, I'm not hungry, but can I have grapes and some water? That's all I want. And then I'm going to go to sleep. So he gave me grapes, and I was just like scarfing them down. I drank like 2 cups of water, and then I passed out. And that was probably around like just before 7 or something like that. I slept until 10, and then I had to pee like a mofo, of course, because I drank so much water. So I got up and I was like, weird, nothing's happened. I thought something was going to happen. And I laid back down, was just about to pass out, and then there was a sensation. And then I was like, interesting. Okay, but I'm gonna go back to sleep, because I heard many stories where it's like sleep and rest until you can't. Like just rest. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna rest. I'm just gonna rest. Like I'm just gonna get as much rest. I'm gonna listen to the wise advice of women before me, and I'm going to rest. I went back to sleep, or I tried to. Just before I was about to fall asleep, there's another one. Like, that's really close together. Is that something? I don't know. And I went back to sleep, did it again, and I think I did this for like, what was 10 when I got up, so it was probably around 2.5 hours where I was just like kind of doze in and out, and there would be a sensation. I think at 1 o'clock I decided to get up. Was it at 1? Yeah, at 1 o'clock I decided to get up because I was like, okay, these sensations are really close together. I I don't know, maybe it'll come fast. Like, I'm definitely gonna rest still, but I just want to have things set up just in case it happens faster than I think. Um, and so I decided to get up. I decided to pull out my pillows and just like I had like made like a little living room bed because we didn't have a couch. It was like just it was like a semi-furnished house, so I had a bed, but I didn't have a couch, didn't have anything like that. So I put like a mattress out in an old a styrofoam mattress, not a very good one. Um, Out in the living room with some pillows. So I just like set that up and like put some lights on and some candles and the camera, just so it's ready. And then my husband woke up. He's like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "Yeah." And but it's like, I think it might be starting. I don't know, but like, could you start the fire just in case we had like fireplace? It was so beautiful. Honestly, it was the coolest thing. It was unplanned. I didn't look for it. It just happened to have it. And so we had these twinkling lights and candles and fire. And honestly, it was so romantic. It was so beautiful. And that night of like just dancing through my sensations and with the fire crackling and the candles and my music in my ears, honestly, I had so much fun. I loved every second of it. Just like dancing around and just like feeling the moment, eating my dried mangoes and grapes and water and some dried fruit and some nuts. And it was just like, I was just having a blast. I was just enjoying every second of it and just like totally in it and totally enjoying it. And yeah, honestly, it was not painful at all. It was just interesting and curious. And I was just like, without any expectation, I was just going along with it without any time frame expectations or anything like that. Um, my husband was great. He would come in and out and to feed the fire or to give me some snacks if I needed it. And that was basically it. And oh yeah, before that, I remember very clearly. I don't know. I think it was before I got up. I think I got up quickly and I was like, okay, maybe I'll have a snack or something. I went to the kitchen and I grabbed. We had just milked the day before in the morning. We had milked the cow from a neighbor that we had been taking care of, and we had fresh raw milk. And I had a glass of fresh raw milk. It was so tasty. And I also had noticed in my pregnancy when I had raw milk that I would clear out my system and I would go to the bathroom. It was perfect. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to take a glass of milk. Maybe this will help. That would be nice because then I have heard that like it can help and just make things more comfortable. So I was like, I'll take this raw milk because I love it and because maybe it'll help. And it did. And it was awesome. I like cleared out my whole system. It was amazing. So maybe it'll work for somebody else if anyone wants that tip. Who knows? Maybe it works. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's
I
just a
love
personal thing.
that.
But it was like the perfect thing. I had my beautiful glass of milk and then like an hour later, entire system cleaned out. It was amazing. And yeah, so how did it go? Then the whole night I just kind of danced, was on and off the bathroom. I had my oh yeah, at 1:15 I had my bloody show, and that was kind of when I was like, okay, this is not just like me pretending like there's something happening, even though it could still be a long time. Like there was still no time expectation. It was just like, okay, this is real. There is like blood coming. That means that's a good thing. Bloody show is a very good sign, meaning that things are happening. Something is happening. And so at around 5 o'clock, he went to go milk the cows and or did he milk the cows? He just let them out. One of the two. He went out to the cows at some point. I went into the shower, which was amazing. And I actually wanted a birth pool. I had a birth pool, but we couldn't figure out how to get the water here. We don't have hot water in a tap, so we couldn't figure out how to fill it up. I hope we solve that solution whenever I have another baby. But unfortunately, I couldn't have my water birth that I always wanted. I had the pool and everything, just no hot water to fill it up. And so I had the shower instead, and that was awesome. But unfortunately, the showers here are always tiled. It was very uncomfortable. Next time, someone suggested, why don't you just put a towel down? I was like, I didn't even think about that. I should have put a towel down on the ground because I was on my hands and knees. And honestly, the next day, my wrists and my fingers and my knees were so sore. Oh my God. It's like I ran a marathon, but I was using just my hands and wrists and knees. Like, I'm like, what is going on? It was so crazy. I did not expect that one. I was like, it hurt way more than my vagina did. That's for sure. And so I spent a lot of time in the shower. I think I spent about 3 hours in the shower. And like kind of like I had like the hot water on my lower back because I had a lot of back pain, back pressure, and it was like a lot of pressure. And then at some point I got out and but I didn't prepare myself. I didn't realize that the shower was kind of like a natural epidural. I was just like helping like soften the sensations. And I was like, so I got out and I was like, whoa, that's intense. I did not expect that. So I was like, go back in the shower, got back in the shower. I was like, next time I get out, I'm mentally preparing for that one because I did not expect that. I didn't think that just something so
Yeah.
simple as hot water would make such a big difference. And it wasn't that it was so painful. It's just like such an intense incline from the first one to when I got out, or the last one until I got out. And so I was like, oh wow, I did not know that. And so, and then I got back in for like maybe another half an hour or something. And then I saw the sun coming through the window because it's like a tiny little window in the top corner. And I saw the sun. I was like, oh, it would be amazing to have sun on my skin. So I got out, dried myself off, and went out into the sunshine. And had my husband lay some blankets down and my yoga mat. And I just sat and like I was on my hands and knees or sitting in the sun. It was just amazing on the grass. And unfortunately, there's a lot of bugs, which didn't bother me. I didn't even notice them. But my house is like, you're being eaten alive. I think you should go inside. Like, and I didn't realize how bad it was until I was looking at my video. I don't know, a couple like 6 months ago or something. I was looking at it. I was like, damn, I had so many bug bites. It's all over my side. Like I look like a freaking constellation. I didn't even realize that. It was crazy. And so after that, I was thinking maybe outside for an hour, maybe 2 hours, and then eventually got back inside, and that was the last time I moved. So then we moved inside. And in the journey of being outside, I had my husband start to push on my back and like squeeze my hips just out of curiosity. And it did relieve a little bit of pressure. But the problem with that, after that, I always needed him to do it. And it was like, if he didn't, it was like this desperation of like, oh my God, you got to do it. You got to do it. And I would get angry because it wasn't right or it wasn't the right position. And yeah, so I think next time I'm not going to have that happen. I think I'm just going to, because, you know, just like the same as the shower, like if you just keep going, it gets slowly more intense and not so intense all at once. And with the same thing with the shower, where I had like realized it like lessened the sensation when it was at full force was like too much to handle just because I hadn't been used to it the whole time. I think next time I would like to do it just by myself and not have any support of that kind because it was too hard to handle it afterwards by myself.
Yeah.
And I could have, of course I have, but it was just like this intensity that was just overwhelming. And so then he started to do it inside. And at some point I was like, maybe I'll try the dilation station, the toilet. I was just like, let's see what this means. So I went and sat down on the toilet just to see what happened. I put a pillow up just to try a different position. And the sensation came, and then I was like, I stood up immediately. I was like, hell no, that's too intense. No, thank you. I'll take my time instead.
Yeah.
And so I was like, nah, that's not happening. But the toilet was actually the perfect height with a couple pillows. So I just like leaned over the toilet and was like doing like a hip sways. It was perfect. Um and then oh yeah, then really quickly after that, I was like, I'm gonna throw up, get me a bowl because the toilet's covered. I can't go in the toilet. And so he got me a bowl or a pot or something and like totally purged everything. And then at some point, I went, oh yeah, and then after that, I went onto the mattress again. And I was on my hands and knees. And I remember telling my husband, oh my God, it's gonna come out both ends. This is intense. Like I just felt like I wanted to throw up, but also like everything was gonna explode out the other side. And then once I said that, I think like 30 seconds later, sploosh, like huge explosion. My water just exploded all over. Like I'm pretty sure I wet my husband and everything. The whole mattress was soaked. Like I just dumped a huge bucket of water on it, like crazy amounts of fluids. Like I've like, you know, usually it like leaks a lot, or you can have like a little explosion. Like it was like the dramatic kind. It was amazing, but a lot of release. And I remember thinking very clearly, okay, there's a release now. I think that was the only break I had my entire labor birth process. I don't know how long it was. I'm just gonna guess it was like between 5 and 10 minutes. But I knew from experience and from stories that as soon as that release goes away, it's gonna get way more intense because now the baby's head is coming down, right? So I was like, I was waiting for it, I was ready for it, and then it came, and oh man, it did. And that's when fetal ejection reflex started hitting in. And let's just say contractions was nothing in comparison to fetal ejection reflex, like zero in comparison. Like the contractions were like, oh, there's a contraction. Then I was like, holy shit, my body's gonna break in half. Like every single time. And I usually had, so basically what I can explain it to, like my experience was, which I'm sure that every woman experiences differently, but this is my experience, was kind of like an in-between between vomiting, like that convulsion, like your whole body kind of like, especially dry heaving, you know, when you're just like your whole body rolls and it's uncomfortable. It might even be a little bit painful because your whole body just does something against your will. And also like, I mean, this is a little TMI, but if you don't go to the bathroom for a long time and then your body kind of forces it out, it's like this expulsion kind of thing that happens, and it's like this contraction that kind of happens. It was like a mixture between those two things. It was so intense, and also it was like really, I felt like my back was breaking. Like, it was so crazy. It was like this, and not like low down where my hips are, but like just up where is that? Like just above my tailbone, I would guess. It was like this, like my body was like arching in half from that point, like not from my hips, like where it usually does, but just above. That was crazy. It was, I don't know if that was the exact experience that was happening, but that's what I experienced. And it was so wild. It was just that that was the most intense part of the entire thing. And that was really when I started to doubt. And I remember thinking, I understand why women get epidurals. I was like, not because it was so painful, it was just so intense. Like it was this overwhelming intensity and I was also exhausted because at this point it was 20 hours later. Yeah, 20 hours probably. Um, and I was exhausted and I was just like, I had no breaks. Like I said, like from the only break I had was at 5 to 10 minutes after my water broke, and then after that, no more breaks. And so like an hour in, I was like, okay, this is really crazy. And I was like, I just want to break. And I got between the 30 seconds that I had between my contractions, I was like bobbing my head back and forth, like, you know, when you're falling asleep a little bit when you're sitting up. And I remember telling my husband, I just want a break. It would be nice to have a break. Like, I can understand why women get epidurals just so they can have a break. Like, that's what I want right now. And then that story started going further and further. And I was like, well, I'm glad I'm not close to a hospital because otherwise I'd probably go to a hospital. So I'm like, probably about a 2 hour drive away. It could be faster if it was a real emergency, but if it wasn't, it's not an emergency. It's like super holy, like with lots of bumps. So in labor, you do not want to go on that road fast. I know this because I just driven 2 months earlier my friend to the hospital, and it was the slowest drive of my life because she was like, slow that down, this is way too fast. And I was going like
Yeah.
5 kilometers an hour. So I was like, oh, I'm so glad I'm not close to the hospital. And that kind of goes further. And I remember having like all these dialogues in my mind of all the stories I'd heard, all the birth stories I'd heard, all the fears that other women had. And that's the thing, the downside of listening to so many stories is that you start to pick out other people's stories. I also had the story of my friend who had started to say, I can't and I don't want to. And I started to say, I can't and I don't want to. And at some point, I literally was like, I'm done going to the hospital. I stood up and my husband's like, hold on there for a second. Luckily, I had prepared him and I had told him that, you know, when we get into transition, there's a really good chance that I might want to go to the hospital. That's what happens to a lot of women. I really doubt it, but there might be a chance. So I prepared him for that. And so he knew to wait for this. And it wasn't like I said something was wrong. Like at no point did I think something was wrong with my baby. That was the cool thing. It's like I remember reflecting back and even now, it's like I never ever had any fear for my baby, not even once. Like somehow there was just this intuitive connection. I didn't even think about it. I didn't have to think, are you okay? But it just was. Like I never even considered my baby once if she was okay. I just knew somehow, I think, because I never, like, as a good mother, I would, of course, have worried, but I didn't. And not once. I was just totally content. It was really just my own experience that I was like, and I remember thinking, I'm sorry, baby, but I can't do this anymore, or something like that. And so my husband, I had been telling him about all the things I've been learning. I did a lot of courses during my pregnancy. One of them being Yolanda's Portal, which was a really pivotal part of my thing. I also did not free birth. I did pain-free birth, which is also a super important part. But that was at the beginning really, really, really helpful, how to learn to breathe in order to relax your uterus so that you're not contracting, there's no tension, so there's less pain. And the cycle goes on in a good way rather than the opposite, which is you have fear, you have tension, and then you have pain, right? And then I remember telling him about something that she talked about, and I don't really remember what she said, to be very honest, but something I told him resonated, and he told me something that reminded me of that, which was something along the lines of go beyond the pain, like let the pain get so big and like just let it get as big as possible or something like that. He's like, just try it for one contract, just try to totally let the pain get big or something. I honestly don't remember what he said, but I just remember he said one contraction and something that reminded me of this that she had said. So I was like, okay, I'll try it for one. And I did. And it was incredible. Like I slowed down. I just let it happen. And I wasn't, and because I had learned the pain-free birth protocol, I literally wasn't fighting any of the contractions. Like I was totally relaxed with each contraction, but there was still not this surrender. It was kind of like, instead of fighting against the wave, I was going with the wave, but I was still swimming rather than just totally letting myself float, if that makes sense. And so I finally let myself just float and just let happen what happens without guiding it whatsoever. So I got intense, and then no more pain. And no more pain for the rest of the labor. It was gone. It was incredible. And then I could feel everything in my body, every single sensation. I could feel her coming down. I remember telling my husband, I'm like, why is it so much in my ass? It should feel in my vagina. Like, why do I not feel anything in my vagina? And then all of a sudden, I was like, I feel it in my vagina. I could feel her. All of a sudden, like, there's something happening. Like, I feel like there's actually a baby coming out of me. I'm not just breaking in half for no reason. And then after that, it was just like incredible. It was just, I could feel everything. I remember it was like watching myself, but not in a disassociating way, just like observing myself but not with eyes, but sensations. I don't know if that makes any sense whatsoever, but I could feel everything and I knew what was happening without any fear or pain or like it was just observing. I don't know how to explain it. It's like watching yourself from like an out of body experience, but a sensation wise rather. And it was so fascinating because I could feel her coming down. And I remember thinking, like 30 seconds before she started to crown, she's about to crown. And I remember thinking, I wonder what this is going to feel like. I've heard so many people talk about it. Like, is it really going to burn? Is it not going to burn? And then I could like feel it happening. I could feel that it was burning, but it wasn't me experiencing. It was like my body was experiencing it without me in it. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it was really, really cool. It was like the coolest thing. I could feel everything without associating myself with the pain. It was like the pain was separate from me. And it was the coolest thing I've ever experienced. And it was so calm and so present. I've never in my life been so present. I was just totally aware of every single thing that was happening, every millimeter that she was coming down. And as she came out, and then my husband's like, "Oh my God, there's a head." And I was like, "Yeah, I know, I can feel it." And it was so incredible. And the only regret that I have is that because of my impatience from before, and because I finally was feeling like there was something happening. I think I was scared. I don't know. I think subconsciously I was scared that I was going to stop feeling like something was happening, that I just kept pushing and I didn't let myself have a break or let my baby have a break. And I kind of just pushed through even when there was no contractions anymore. And I forced my baby to be born faster than I wanted to. And I wish I wouldn't have done that. I wish I would have given more time and not pushed it so much. For a couple of different reasons. I don't know if this is the fact, but I have a prolapse now, a uterine prolapse, and I think it might be from that because I was just force pushing her out all the way, even though it was painful, even though I was totally present. I just was like, just kept going. I just kept pushing and pushing and pushing until she
Yeah.
was out. Like literally from the point when I released that fear, and that pain, all the way until she was born, I basically didn't stop pushing that whole time. And I wish I would have just let it happen instead of like forcing it. And that's the only thing that I regret. But everything else was amazing and it was incredible. When she was born, I caught her in my own hands. Like I reached down and grabbed her. I could feel her coming out. I knew when she was ready to be caught. And I caught her. She was born with her hand on her side like this. And so when she was born, her hand came out like this right away. It was really cool. And I remember reaching down and grabbing her head in her hand. And I remember thinking, she feels like an octopus because it was so slippery and it was like she was really wrinkly, like she had like those baby wrinkles that are really cute. And so when I grabbed her, I was like, I don't know why, but I was like, I know this is a baby, but this feels like an octopus. Like it was so wild. And I pulled her up, put her on my chest, and then I had the most incredible oxytocin high of my entire like. I've smoked marijuana. I'm never really used much recreational drugs, but marijuana I've done a couple of times, and like it was like a million times better. It was the coolest thing ever. I was like completely euphoric. Like I don't even know how to explain it. Like literally the best feeling in the entire world ever. And it was just like having her there. I was completely out of control. Like I'm a type A super controlled person. I was like bawling my eyes out and I was like, "Oh my God, you're real." Like I knew she was real. I had been feeling her, but this realization of having her come out of me and then actually be this baby in my arms, it was like, whoa, this is actually real. Like this is not just in my head. This is a real thing. And it was the coolest thing. And I was just hugging her and crying and looking at her. There's a video that I have on my Instagram where I'm just crying, and it was just the coolest moment of my life. And then I don't know how long had passed. Maybe, I don't know, I'm just guessing 10 to 15 minutes maybe. And then my husband's like, "Can we look to see what if it's a girl or a boy?" And so caveat to this is that my whole pregnancy, everyone had been telling me that I was carrying a boy, especially here in Peru. There's a lot of like midwives' tales or like understanding of medicine, plant medicine, which is interesting because there's a lot of medical stuff here too, a lot of issues with that. But everyone seems to they have this thing where they supposedly know how by the way that you're carrying if you have a boy or a girl. So everyone and their mother was telling me you're gonna have a boy, and every single time someone said that, and before I was pregnant, I had no preference of a girl or a boy, but before then, when I was pregnant, everyone would say that it would drive me nuts. I was like, you don't know my body, like I don't care like everyone else, and it would piss me off. And then if someone said I was getting a girl, I'd be like, yeah, I think so too. I don't know. And I didn't really know, to be honest. Like, I think that subconsciously, obviously, I knew because that's why it obviously pissed me off when they said it was a boy, that she was a boy. But like, I didn't really have like a conscious, okay, she's a girl. And maybe I just didn't want to admit it either because I was afraid of being wrong or something like that. And I remember like my whole pregnancy, I had to be like really consciously say it's okay to have a boy. If I have a boy, it's okay. Like boy is just as beautiful as a girl, and like boys are really special too. And I remember thinking like, oh, it'll be so cool because he'll be the older brother, and if I have another baby, he can be there present, and it'll like change how he sees birth. And like, okay, it's gonna be okay. It's okay to have a boy. Like I had to convince myself that it was okay to have a boy too, because I was so devastated that I might have a boy and not a girl. I don't know why that came in. It must have been because I subconsciously knew. So when I looked down and I saw Yoni, I was beside myself. I was like, I knew it, she's a girl. And I looked at least 100 times over the next 5 days. I was like, okay, she's still a girl. Yeah, oh, no, okay, I saw it right. It's not just like, sometimes people get confused, with if it's balls or a vagina, because they can be so swollen when they're born. Like, no, it's still okay. No, it's a girl. It's a girl. Okay, no, it's still a girl. Okay, yeah, I was right. I was like, and I remember saying,
Oh,
I knew that they weren't right. I knew that they didn't know my body. Like, she's a girl. I knew it. And I remember thinking so many times after she was born, I'm so glad you're a girl. Like, I'm so happy you're a girl. I don't know why, because I actually for a long time just wanted boys. I never wanted girls, but apparently something knew that I was having a girl, or I don't know what happened, but I was very excited, and I still am very happy that she's a girl. I have nothing against boys, but for some reason that's what I wanted, and that's what I got. So yeah, and then after that, probably I thought it was really quick, but I got really quickly. I got, which turned out was an hour, because I checked like I said, I was looking at my birth videos about 6 months ago, and that's when I realized it was actually about an hour after she was born. But I thought it felt really quick, like that time just flew by. And I all of a sudden started getting that not just contractions, but also the fetal ejection reflex, which I was really surprised about, because I've only ever heard of women saying that
hmm.
they get contractions when they come, or they get uncomfortable or something like that. So I was not expecting that. I was like, okay, I'm done with the fetal ejection reflex, and I got it again. I was like, what? This is so intense. I didn't expect that to come again. And then I had to work pretty hard to get the placenta out. I tried squatting. I tried once and it didn't really work, so I just gave it a little bit longer. I tried breastfeeding her. She had zero interest. That's another part of the story. And then I tried again, and then eventually I laid her down in a blanket on the bed, and then I like squatted down and I used both hands and I pulled it out, and it was perfect. So it was really easy. But I actually had something that I'd never seen before and I've never heard of before, and my placenta was actually separated. So I had like one piece and then another big piece, and that for a long time I was like, because I actually wasn't even sure if I was, because my belly was still really big when she was born. I was like, maybe, because I was having that fetal ejection, I was like, maybe there's another baby. And I told my husband, like, I don't know if this is going to be a placenta or a baby. Like, something's coming out. And I did not expect to have fetal ejection reflex again. So I was like, maybe this is another baby. And so I was like, working on it. And then eventually I was like, no, I'm pretty sure it's a placenta. Like, I felt up there and it was like squishy. And I was like, I think it's a placenta. So I pulled it out. And then when this other chunk came out, when I pulled the other one out, I was like, maybe I did have another baby, and like this is like the clots left over, because it was pretty big, and I don't know. But then afterwards, my mom, being a nurse, she had looked through it and she's like, no, it's just a piece of your placenta, which scared her, of course. And the medical side is like, oh my god, something could have gone wrong. But I just trusted. I was like, no, my body knew what to do. It just pushed it right out. Maybe that's why I had the fetal ejection reflex, because it just knew it was time to get it all out or something like that.
Yeah.
And I also bled a lot, and it wasn't something that scared me, but it was a lot of blood. And luckily I was not worried about it at all, and I tested my body and I felt good and I felt really clear, so I didn't have a problem. But I had my entire mattress was ruined. Like all my clothes I was wearing, like the nightgown, it was all soaked in blood. There was a lot. There was so much so that I was like pale white, which happens to me a lot if I'm sick and stuff like that. I'm very sensitive with blood and stuff, with like blood leaving my body, or blood sugar and stuff like that. But then it was born and I felt all good. It was good. And then I ended up consuming some of my placenta, which was really awesome. Not the same day, but the next morning, which was only about, she was born at 8 at nighttime. And then the next morning, probably around 6 or so, I had my first placenta smoothie, and that was awesome. That like picked me up, gave me the energy that I needed. My blood was back in my face again, like I was not white anymore. And it was awesome. I have nothing against it. It was really tasty. Honestly, it didn't bother me. I was like, I wonder how this is gonna taste, but it was actually fine. And yeah, so that was really cool. The one thing that did happen for me, which I also had never heard before, and I really wanted to share it because just in case this happens to somebody else, is that my daughter had zero interest in my boob, zero interest in sucking. She had no suck reflex, which terrified me because I'd worked with tons of babies at that point. My mom was a nurse, and I called her and I was like, I don't know what's going on. She doesn't even want to suck. And so she came over about 4 hours after she was born, and we tried again and again, and nothing happened. And then the next morning we tried again, and we expressed colostrum and tried to spoon feed her and give her a little bit of that. And then at some point I was just like looking down, it's like, what's going on? Like, why don't you want to, like, I was terrified. I was like, oh my God, I had this beautiful birth. I had this beautiful postpartum, like everything went well. And now my baby won't suck. Now I'm gonna have to go to the hospital. And like, there's not even like, I can't even give her formula because she doesn't even suck. Like, even if I like, she has no suck reflex. They're gonna have to put a feeding tube in her. And I was like, oh my God, like imagine that. Wouldn't that be just great? And I just asked her, like, what's going on, honey? Like, why aren't you eating? Why aren't you interested? And then the biggest meconium poop came out into my hand, like huge, like a whole handful. And she did another 20 of those, around 20 of those for the next 6 hours or so. And so that was like, it's like, when she put that in my hand, I was like, okay, maybe she's just full. That would make sense. And so then she had another one and another one and another. And throughout that, we were trying to give her colostrum, trying to keep going. And then around at 30 hours after she was born, 30, that's right? 24, 30? No, about 30 hours. I think it was in the nighttime. At some point, my mom's like, if she doesn't, like she even got my husband to go buy formula and stuff like that. Cause like, if she doesn't feed, we're gonna have to do something. And then I was like, hey, honey, we got to do something. Like everyone left the room. I just focused on her. I was like, hey, you've got to latch on because this is getting scary. And if my mom's getting nervous, we have a big problem. I'm nervous. I don't know what to do anymore. And then she latched on. And then after that, we have never had an issue after that. It was incredible. And the cool thing was expressing colostrum is so damn painful that after that, breastfeeding was nothing. And I was so excited when she finally latched on that after that, I was like, the pain was like a sign of that it was working. Like she's actually latching on. She's actually drinking. It was like it wasn't, and honestly, it wasn't really that painful. It was just a weird sensation that I didn't recognize before, obviously, right? And it was like, yeah, yeah, I guess it was kind of pain. I don't know. It depends on what you call pain. Like people call pain going to the gym. You know, if you don't like the gym, that's painful too, right? So it was like this intensity that I was like, this is a good sign. And every time it brought a smile to my face, like she's breastfeeding, it's working, and it was like a sign. Like, and that was the cool thing. Like at nighttime, when we were co-sleeping, I would breastfeed her. I always knew that she had a good latch when it hurt. And that was like not hurt, but like that same sensation. And that was always like, okay, she's got it. We've got it. It's good. We're good. So after that was like this association. I think that was the cool thing about being so terrified that she wasn't going to breastfeed that when she finally did, it was like the best feeling in the world, even though it was probably uncomfortable. So
That's incredible.
that was the first 24 hours to 30 hours after she was born.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that piece because I I agree that there is a larger spectrum of normal with the breastfeeding, like immediately post-birth, that people don't really talk about that much. So it's very easily pathologized when,
Mm-hmm.
babies don't come out the womb like immediately wanting to eat. And,
Exactly.
I've actually heard many, many stories like yours where,
Really? Oh, that's
babies just
amazing. I've never heard of
not.
that before.
I mean, yours is on the longer end, but I've heard babies like, sleep for 10 hours after being born and not
Mm-hmm.
have any interest in eating. And it's kind of like a forced thing for a while
Mm-hmm.
until like usually the next day. And I've been hearing that actually more frequently, like, I mean, more recently than I've ever heard before. And I don't know what that's about. But I love that you shared that, yeah, because I think that's something that's really important for women to know that, yeah, the spectrum of normal is so much bigger than what we're told.
Mm-hmm.
And I love your birth
Yeah, and my
story
mom
for that
actually,
too.
absolutely. My mom actually, after we relieved, she was like, I guess she was just so full because you just ate so well in pregnancy that she was just really well nourished. She just was full. She wasn't hungry.
Hmm.
And it was funny because I had that thought. I was like, I think she's just full. And it's crazy because in this whole like in pregnant in preconception, conception, then pregnancy, giving birth, and then the early postpartum, and now in mothering, like there are so many times my intuition comes in and I ignored it or I didn't believe it, and it's always right. Like I do EC, so early elimination communication, which is baby pottying, so putting a baby on a potty
Yeah.
right away. And there's so many times, like even now, I'm like, I think she has to go pee, and I ignore it, and then she goes pee like every single time. And so like my intuition knows there's something in us that just knows. And I
Hmm.
think we are not trained or taught growing up how to trust that, how to trust our own instincts. We're told our whole lives that we don't know anything about our own bodies, or that we're just crazy or overreacting or something like that, right? And it's been incredible to see how correct, and having that almost immediate feedback in my pregnancy with her, um giving birth with her, then afterwards with the breastfeeding thing, that I just knew, like I knew, I was like, I think she's full, I think she's just not hungry, and that's why she's not sucking. But of course, like the pathologization, having my mom there and having like this pressure and like fear that, okay, something's going to go wrong and like this responsibility and all that made me second guess myself, even though somehow I did know because I had that thought. And then she just kept pooping those meconium poops. And then eventually, when she was not full anymore, she was hungry. And yeah, it's just incredible to see the different possibilities and different things. And it's cool to have my own story that's different than what I'd heard before and what I experienced. So that was really an interesting thing.
Yeah, I was gonna say actually I love the story of the placenta being born too, because that's another one that you don't hear a lot. And the placenta birth, I feel like, is so, people are so nervous about that not looking quote unquote normal. But again, like the spectrum of norm for the placenta is a lot bigger than we're told it is. And yeah,
Yeah.
I love that your body just knew what to do. And
Mm-hmm.
that's incredible. um Thank you so much for sharing your story, because I mean, I really enjoyed every single bit of it, and you're such an amazing storyteller too. Like, so how can the listeners find you? What are you up to now? I know you're a birth worker, so please share your offerings and just what you're up to nowadays.
Yeah, so I am a birth worker, but I'm not currently attending births because my little one is just a year old and I'm not willing to separate from her for that long yet. But maybe in the future we'll see. But I want to have more, so well, I'm supporting women virtually right now. And what I'm offering is actually right now, I'm just launching a program that I just started, which is a conception, pregnancy, birth, and postpartum program, which basically is everything that you need in order to prepare for every step of the journey. It's basically guiding women through the journey that I did, everything that I learned. I feel like I learned so much in my journey, and I very consciously went through the entire journey, everything from conception all the way to my postpartum. And I was very, very conscious of how I planned everything. I did a lot of learning. I also am an RBK, so I learned a lot professionally also. And so basically, I want to support women through that whole journey, including preparing their partners for anything that can happen, how to best support them, to understand the male and female energy, what is the place for the partner or the husband in the birth space, and how to prepare properly for postpartum so that it is the highest likelihood of success and joy and thriving, and into motherhood. So I also will be teaching about early communication, early elimination communication, what I learned, the baby pottying, and everything in between. And it's great for any woman, whether you're free birthing or whatever your plan is, because it'll basically prepare you and help you understand your body, your hormones, what to expect, what's biologically normal, the variations of normal, like we've been talking about a little bit here. And just to get a really big picture of what birth is really, because I feel like a lot of women go into birth just expecting their experts, quote unquote, to know everything about their body, and they don't really prepare. They don't really know what's actually happening in the body. And I think that's a reason why birth can be often so painful for women, because they really don't know what to expect, and they're shocked and they're scared, and there's that tension, fear, tension, pain cycle happening. And so I think a big key is understanding what's going on in your body, not being afraid of it, and understanding the process and the steps in order to really be able to relax and enjoy the process and go with whatever comes, whatever your body ends up doing, whatever your journey is. So yeah, everything from hormones and the actual process, and everything in between. So I'm really excited to help
I
prepare
love
women and
that.
families and partners to have the most beautiful experience, because I think it really is supposed to be beautiful. I think pregnancy can be incredible. It's all really about the mindset and how you prepare for it. And so I'm doing
Yeah.
a 3-month program, and it's for women and their partners or their families or the support team. And yeah, it's going to be 15 modules. It's really awesome. It's really impact, but it's all recorded and it's lifetime access. And it's the first time I'm launching it. It's probably going to be the only time I launch it like this. So I'm really excited to see how the first round goes.
Awesome. That sounds incredible. I love that so much. So needed, like support from beginning to end. Like that's so solid.
Yeah, and it's for anyone.
And
Even if a woman is already pregnant, it'll still be beneficial to her, because there's a lot of stuff we're talking in the preconception about diet, which is really helpful, obviously, in pregnancy also. So, and then there's the option to add on coaching if you want to, or coaching just by itself if you don't want to do the program. I also do that, and I'm on social media on Instagram, natural Lau, like Laura, but without the RA at the end, underscore in the middle, and I share all the information, and I really try to give free resources and to give as much information and value as I can. And if you really want more in depth, then that's where the coaching and the program comes in.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I will have that in the show notes so that you guys can follow Laura and keep up with all of what she's, offering to the world. She gives really she puts really informative content out there. So highly recommend following her. And I'll also have a link for your new program coming up.
Oh, that'd be amazing. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much, Laura.
Thank you.